Today we're talking about the concept of manipulation and the possibility that sometimes less is more when it comes to trying to get a desired result from other people, socially or in the workplace. There is this notion that if you try to be super transparent, super available, people will take advantage of that. If you're always happy to help, they'll throw more work at you. If you always tell them the truth, then they'll view that as some sort of weakness. It's this sort of a toxic idea that if you live your life as a good person, a trusting person, a positive person, you're just going to be taken advantage of because corruption ultimately wins in the end. So that school of thought would say you should always be playing mind games with other people. You should withhold a smile, withhold praise. You should be the person who doesn't reply to a text message for a while because you want the other party to think that maybe you're not interested in them. Because if they think you're not interested in them, then they might be more willing to go out of their way to try to earn your respect instead of taking you for granted. The list could go on. But the truth is that absolute candor is actually the key to healthy relationships. To tell people the truth, to mean what you say, and to come at life from a genuine perspective that isn't veiled in pretense. Now, it's true that the best way to get ahead is to play mind games with others if you're a person who's not capable of being honest with yourself. If you want to get ahead by cheating, then the best way to do it is to be really good at cheating. But if your ethos is to elevate whatever is true, whatever is just, whatever is wholesome and upright, if your yes is a yes and your no is a no, then truth, not manipulation, is the key to meaningful relationships and enduring success. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't protect ourselves. And that's where blind optimism sometimes tries to suggest that if you believe in people, if you're an optimist, then you should just never make a plan for the possibility that people will backstab you, or that you will be betrayed, or that manipulative people will act in their own best interest. The truth is that we do need to protect ourselves from people who are manipulative. We do need to safeguard ourselves against those realities of human life, that not everyone is going to live their life on a basis of some sort of altruistic, benevolent moral code. So how do we do that? Well, we do hedge our bets, but we do it transparently. You see, I would tell probably the closest friends I have that I trust them, but I don't trust them completely. I trust them to the point where their interest diverges from my own. Because I know that the probability is that in the case of most of them, They will do what they feel is in their interest before they will do what is in mine. Even if they don't believe that, that is probably the truth. So I'm not going to put someone in a position where I am relying on their goodwill, because I can't necessarily count on someone else's goodwill. Even if I think of them positively as an individual, there is a point where they probably will pull a Judas and betray me for a few pieces of silver. That's not really pessimism. That's just a pragmatic understanding of life. And to a point, I would also say the same thing of myself. As much as I would like to be the right kind of a person, if things got bad enough, I would probably do what was in my best interest rather than sacrificing myself for the sake of someone else's greater good. So I try to avoid putting myself also in positions where I might become morally compromised due to desperation or personal hardship. You see, if you are in a place of financial health, you're much less likely to be interested when someone comes along and offers you a good business deal that's also a corrupt one. So we should never trust ourselves completely, and we should never trust others completely, because human beings have their limits, and that's just a unavoidable part of how human nature works. But that does not mean that we need to be manipulative of other people in order to get our way. It doesn't mean that we have to lie to people. It doesn't mean that we have to passively look for ways to make people think one thing which is not true so that we can execute a mission of deception. Protecting yourself does not mean that you have to be a liar. And I think that that's an important distinction to make. Because there are people who say, well, just believe good, that there's good in the world, and, you know, you don't have to lock your doors. Well, that's not really fair, because if you don't lock your doors, someone might rob you. So sometimes it is important to keep things confidential. Sometimes it is important to not reveal everything that you know. Sometimes it is important, even if you do like people or care about them, to know that they may not necessarily always have your back. But we should be honest. Honest about why we're doing the things we're doing. Honest if we're corrected. Honest to change course if that's what's right. And if people want to play games with you, just move on. Because the truth is, there are always going to be a lot of people who think that the best way to get ahead in life is to try to get people's attention, to keep others in their orbit, while also avoiding a need for commitment. There will always be people who want to make sure that there's a lot of offers on the table, while they never actually want to be under any obligation to accept the duty, the responsibility that comes with meaningful commitment. So don't think that you will get ahead by being a manipulative person. Sometimes it's tempting maybe to think that way, especially if you sometimes feel like you get the short end of the stick. You might think, well, maybe I just need to be more conniving or cunning because it's a dog-eat-dog world, so I need to figure out how to be a little bit more cutthroat. That doesn't really pay off in the end. And it also is kind of a debuff that you'll take with you throughout your entire life. It's like a poison that you can poison your enemies with, but at the expense of slowly poisoning yourself permanently along the way. And in the end, it's just not worth it. So don't live your life consuming a poison pill thinking that if you embrace corruption, you'll be able to fight corruption with it. Just be honest with people. Be straightforward. Be direct. Be kind, but also protect your own interests while being upfront and direct about it. And I think there's a lot of beauty and elegance in being able to tell the truth to people, to say, this is where I stand, this is what I'm doing. And a lot of people will take offense to it because they'll start to feel like you're not necessarily 100% on their side. And that's okay. But there's a difference between being upfront with people and using levers of omission and silence and false pretenses to try to get people to do what you want them to do. You don't have to be manipulative to be successful in life. There's a lot of people who will be manipulative and they don't even really see it that way. They don't get up in the morning and say, I'm going to manipulate as many people as I can. But that's what they're doing, because they're not really out to tell the truth. They're out to do things that'll make their Instagram account look good today while continuing to waste other people's time. It could be true in relationships. It could be true in the workplace. People smile on the front side, then they carry a knife behind their back. And there is a lot of that. The point is, though you should protect yourself from that, you'll never get ahead by embracing that type of an attitude yourself. We should always believe the best in others while also not putting others in a position where they can harm us. And I suppose the best way to make sure people aren't in a position to harm us is to align ourselves with people who share a common set of values and a common set of interests and a common set of goals. When you're surrounded by like-minded people, then you tend to be able to be more genuine with those people instead of having to hedge your bets to make sure they don't backstab you. It can be hard to find people who are like-minded, but if you do find them, I also think it's important to point out you don't need to have an enormous number of people in your corner. All you really need is probably a half dozen good people you can count on, and that's enough. You don't need a whole army. Sometimes three's a crowd. So as you try to build meaningful relationships professionally, romantically, socially, remember it's not about quantity, it's about quality. And you don't need to find a lot of people, just a few who will be good allies. And start by investing in people who share your perspective on life. sometimes we invest in people who maybe they're good people, but they also have a tendency to always pick the wrong side whenever there's a decision to be made. You just know. They might mean well, but they seem to always be intrigued by the wrong kind of things. You can tell people who are inclined to be manipulative. And that's what makes us feel like we have to react in kind. When we surround ourselves with people who already have displayed red flags, they've already shown themselves to be manipulative people. But we want to ignore that. Because maybe, even though they've been manipulative to others, with us, it'll be different. And when we do that, well, it can't be a surprise when a bear acts like a bear. Because it can't change its nature. So if you want to be surrounded with people who are of a good nature, don't ignore red flags. As always, on your journey, best of luck with the adventure. Life has loveliness to sell. Buy it and never count the cost. Till next time, thanks so much for watching.